Here is my disclaimer. The following information was obtained from historical records, eyewitness accounts, other information sources, and including my own opinion. Since I was not always there at the time to verify it, it may or may not be correct. Gassers originated in the late 1950s and continued until the early 1970s. They were intended by drag racing's rules makers as a street strip type car, but the Gassers eventually transformed into all-out race cars. With few rules, they were very popular with the drag racers. The classes were designated as A through J Gas. Other designations were applied for certain performance modifications. Each class was based on so many pounds of weight per cubic inch of engine displacement. Each car is weighed after every official qualifying or eliminations pass. The classes had their own large and loyal fan base, and here we are still talking about them to this day. The Gasser era is my personal favorite. It was real class racing where a person could bring their car at any performance level, be assigned a class and compete for a championship. As you explore this era of drag racing, it's easy to see why they are still a fan favorite in drag racing history. Gassers came in every shape, size, make and model. We will explore some of the famous and not so famous cars that ran in that golden age of drag racing. If you don't want to see Gassers of that era, I would advise you to leave now. This is Gene Schwartz in his 1951 Chevrolet. In the 1966 NHRA Nationals at Indianapolis Raceway Park, he won the E-Gas class running a 1298 at 105 miles per hour. This is the Artiega and Helmuth Willys Gasser. It was a 1939 Overland with a 41 Willys nose. It was powered by a supercharged gas 354 Oldsmobile with a 3-speed manual transmission. In 1965 it ran an 1115 at 139 miles per hour. This is John Helmuth and Wayne Artiega. This is Jack Merkel's 1933 Willys. It had a Hilborn injected 427 big block Chevy with a 671 blower. From what I read, it ran a best pass of 8.75 seconds at 160 miles per hour. The Wohlhauser brothers built this Hemi-powered Willys Jeep Overland wagon that ran in the B-Gas class. There is not a lot of information on this car, but I think it looks great. Roger Groves, Grove Brothers, Opel Kadett ran in the A-Gas class running an injected 426 Hemi. I had an Opel Kadett when I was 15 years old. It had no reverse. I had to push it out of pull-in parking spots. I bought that car for $25. This is Jeg Coughlin's Jeg's Automotive in Columbus, Ohio, who grew a speed shop hobby into the Jeg's parts retailer we know today. The Austin was Hemi-powered. This is Ferd Knapfel's Storming Bull Gasser. His F-Gas 55 Chevy was one of the earliest and most successful small-engine, heavy car gassers. The car ran a 1332 at 105 miles per hour in Indy in 1964. Ferd was a many-time class winner. Paulday's 1933 Willys Agitator that ran BB gas. It had a blown Chevy for power and ran in the high nines. Here is Joplin, Missouri's Harley Estes 1940 Willys running a Oldsmobile engine. On September 15, 1963 it ran 1309 at 112 miles per hour at Springfield Ozark Dragway. Jerry Underwood's Denver, Colorado-based 1948 Anglia was running a 427 big block Chevy. Ron Hassel's B-Gas Chevy-powered Anglia and Nick Sapides in Ollie Olson's 426 Hemi Willys Gasser running at the Old Miami Speedway. This 1935 Willys was owned by Gordon Selkirk and Saul Bork from Peoria, Illinois. It was powered by a supercharged 324 Oldsmobile with a 3-speed manual transmission. It ran a 10.7 at 135 miles per hour. It did most of its racing at the Quad City Drag Strip in Cordova, Illinois. This is Bill Gorvitz Vitamin C Willys. It was an early gasser that used a new 1964 426 Hemi. The Rainford brothers from Pottstown, Pennsylvania ran a 1938 Chevy sedan called the Moose. Drivers Horace and Paul Rainford shared driving duties in D-Gas. This is E.L. Williams Henry J. B. Gasser. The 1951 Kaiser Henry J was powered by a 426 Hemi. This 1940 Willys is owned by the Bergen brothers from Anaheim, California. It ran a 909 at 154 miles per hour at Orange County in 1967. I absolutely love this car. The speed equipment industry's largest and most successful warehouse operation was owned and operated by the Amato brothers of Exeter, Pennsylvania. Here is Joe Amato's 1940 Chevy B-Gas supercharged car he ran prior to moving into Top Alcohol Funny Car and then to Top Fuel. Harry Luzader started running his 1932 Ford in C-Gas, then added weight and dropped down to D-Gas where he had his most success. That is a really clean-looking race car. Here is the Stickle Riffle 1940 Willys Coupe running in B-Gas with a small block Chevy. We are going way back in time here. Here is the legend Arnie the Farmer Beswick. Here's Beswick's earliest hot rod, a 1958 Pontiac C-Gasser from Morrison, Illinois. Here is the Pierce Trucking 1953 Ford Thames Panel A Gasser. It had a Hilborn injected 370 cubic inch small block Chevrolet engine, Mondello heads, Isky cam and a Cal Hydro transmission. It ran a 10.6 at 134 miles per hour. Here is the Teixeira Brothers B-Gas 1941 Willys. It was powered by a Chevrolet engine. Here we have Paddock's Mini Brute, a 1967 Opel Kadett owned by Norm Paddock from Westfield, Indiana. It was powered by a supercharged gas 392 Chrysler Hemi with a 4-speed manual transmission. Its quickest run in 1968 was a 8:28 at 169 miles per hour. Shifting a low 8-second car with a manual 4-speed transmission, there are not many people willing to do that today. I don't know who owns this degasser, but I thought this was a great picture of the car and the tower at Aquasco Speedway. It opened in 1957 and was forced to close in 1978 with the county citing environmental issues. This 3-window 32 Ford A-Gasser was one of several cars sponsored by King Speed Shops Chicagoland. The Rodriguez brothers built and for many years raced this 1956 210 sedan in D-Gas. Hutt's Dyno Shop was Ron Hutter's Cleveland area engine shop. Larry Meyer and Ed Clough from Phoenix, Arizona ran this very nice A-Gas Austin pickup. It had a blown Chrysler engine and in 1968 ran a 890 at 162 miles per hour. This is a really good-looking truck. Charlie Hill's 1940 Willys at the 1962 NHRA Nationals in Indy. This is a great picture. This is the early McClellan brothers humping Henry Ford Falcon running a 6-cylinder in J-Gas. We would really like to hear the story about how the car got its name. Here is Gary Dencham's teacher's pet running his 1933 Willys AA Gasser at Lions Drag Strip. Gary went on to running Top Fuel Funny Cars. This is Chuck Tiller's Exhaust Specialties sponsored B-Gasser from Portland. It was powered by a small block Chevy. Here is the Pied Piper A-Gasser at Indy in 1967. This is Brian Batchelder and Gordon Cullinan's B-Gas 1939 Chevy. They were from South Portland, Maine and owned B&G Speed Shop. This is Dave Koffel's 1949 E-Gas Packard. It had a 283 small block Chevrolet from a 1961 Corvette bored out to 292 and a 4-speed manual transmission. In 1961, Koffel set a new NHRA national record in E-Gas running 13.33 seconds at 104 miles per hour. Koffel went on to win the 1962 NHRA E-Gas national title. George Montgomery drove this AA-Gas Ford Prefect that he named the Gasser Passer. It was powered by a 327 Chevy with a 4-speed transmission. It ran a 950 at 152 miles per hour. Here is Ron Rigier's B-Gas 1940 Willys from Omaha, Nebraska sponsored by Charlie's Speed and Machine. It ran a 427 Chevy. This is Teddy Bear, a 1932 Ford Victoria B-Gasser owned by Ted and Steve Samsel from Minneapolis, Minnesota. It ran a 1206 at 112 miles per hour in 1963. This is a 1941 Willys truck owned by the Pinella brothers. On March 20, 1966 at Kingdon Drag Strip in Lodi, California, it ran a 1066 at 134 miles per hour. Here is Steve Kanuka's C-Gas Willys pickup with a 301-inch injected Chevrolet engine. It set the record at 1080 and 127 miles per hour. Here is Lauren Sapp's Little Toad. It was a G-Gas green Ford Anglia running a Hudson 6-cylinder. It ran a 12.9 at 109 miles per hour, weighing in at 1,900 pounds. Who would have known Hudsons made good race engines? This is New York's Eddie Sanzo running this 1940 Willys with a blown small-block Chevy Power by Jack Merkel. Sanzo drove the car and ran both A and B gas. This is Dick Schroyer's 1948 Thames panel truck. It ran NC and D gas and sometimes in D altered. Here is Louisville, Kentucky's John Carter's 1940 Willys Coupe. It had a bored-out 1958 blown injected Chevrolet engine, a 1955 Pontiac transmission and a Chevrolet rear end with 557 gears. East Providence, Rhode Island's Tasca Ford has been involved in drag racing since the 1950s. Bob Tasca knew racing on Sunday meant selling on Monday. This 1957 Ford ran a 427 FE engine. This is Titusville, Florida's Tommy Shinholster Chop Top 1940 Willys Coupe. It had a blown small-block Chevy for power with a 4-speed transmission. This is the Jim Thompson Bob Riffle Rod Shop Anglia C-Gasser. Here's a classic A-Gas supercharged matchup at the Nationals with Paul Frost's purple 1940 Willys and Jim Audie's Buffalo, New York-based Austin. If you ran A-Gas, you really had to bring it. This is the Eckerd and Kirk 1948 Anglia running in B-Gas. The color-tinted plexiglass windows the cars ran at that time were eventually outlawed by the NHRA as a safety measure. I have to admit, I liked the way they looked. I always liked the yellow and the green tints. This is the Jinx A-Gas Willys in 1962. They were looking to make a partial warm-up run and the throttle stuck. They went off the right side of the track and rolled it. This is Jerry Ruth's 1938 Chevy, sponsored by Ruth Realty. It had a blown small-block Chevy for power. This 1941 Willys is owned by Jerry and Gary Malicote from Long Beach, California. It was powered by a supercharged 283 Chevrolet with a 4-speed manual transmission. In 1961 it ran 1104 at 126 miles per hour. Phoenix, Arizona's Johnny Loper's Lil Haas's Anglia A-Gasser. Loper's small-block Chevy-powered car became a well-known advertisement for his Loper's Speed Shop. It ran 1027 at 138 miles per hour. Here he is at the NHRA Winter Nationals in Pomona, California. This is a great picture at the 1965 NHRA Nationals. A-Gas supercharged drivers Doug Cook wheel stands against New York standout Jack Merkel's 1933 Chevy-powered Willys. That's about as good as it gets when it comes to gassers. This is the Brasher and Cummings 1933 Willys Coupe. Owned by Bill Brasher and Virgil Cummings from Hayward, California. It ran a 1032 at 132 miles per hour at Fremont Drag Strip on June 5, 1966. I don't know anything about this Henry J. and I couldn't find any history on it, but I'll bet the International Pickle Packers Super Pickle was a crowd favorite once the beer started flowing in the stands. If you know anything about it, please comment below. The MPI Inch Pincher / European Motor Products was owned by Joe Vitone from Riverside, California. The 1956 Volkswagen sedan ran a 1345 at 97 miles per hour at Fremont Drag Strip on March 12, 1966. This is how many gassers of the day were towed to the races, a pickup truck with a tow bar. I'm sure it was slow going, but it got them there. This is Steve Corney's Goldfinger. It ran in AA gas, BB altered and match raced with a blown Chrysler Hemi. It ran a 888 at 158 miles per hour at Irwindale, California on January 16, 1968. I realized the car didn't weigh a lot and I hate to be judgmental, but that trailer looks pretty sketchy. This is Ollie Olson's car from West Palm Beach, Florida, a 1940 Willys. The car had several engines over the years, but in Indianapolis, September 1961, with the injected gas 352 Chevrolet and a 4-speed manual transmission, it ran an 1168 at 116 miles per hour. This 1933 gas Willys is owned by Steve McGee from Vancouver, Washington. It was powered by a supercharged 480 Chrysler Hemi with an automatic transmission. Steve was a longtime top fuel drag racer. You don't see many Gasser Buicks since they were long and heavy. This one appears to be a 1940 with a straight 8 running H-gas. My dad has a 1938 Buick Coupe with the straight 8 engine. This is the AAGS Austin owned by John Herrera. In 1968 he replaced the steel body with a funny car-style one-piece fiberglass flip-up body. It ran a 464 Chrysler Hemi and in 1968 ran a best time of 8:87 at 158 miles per hour. This 1956 Chevy was ran by Dick Panetton, Dick Jones and Chris Christensen. From what I read, it originally started out in C-Gas, then moved to B-Gas, running a 401 injected small block Chevy and a 4-speed manual transmission. This is Kevin Dunn's 1940 Willys Gasser pickup truck running an injected big block Chevrolet engine. This is a 1948 Crosley wagon called Possum Chaser that ran in the A-Gas class, was built by Edward Bruga of Fairfield, Iowa. Most cars of the Gasser era were big and heavy, but not the Crosley. Here it is being hauled in the back of a pickup truck. The truck is squatting a little bit, but we've all seen worse. Here is Frank Papesh's war wagon from Joliet, Illinois. It had a big block Chevy with Hilborn injectors and a turbo 400 transmission. Jack the Bear Coonrod from Portland, Washington, owned the A-Gas 1933 Willys. The chassis was designed and built by Chuck Finders and powered by a blown 392 Chrysler Hemi. In 1966 it ran a 963 at 161 miles per hour. The Gordon Automotive Gasser owned by Jim Audi from Buffalo, New York. It was a 1969 Opel GT powered by a supercharged gas 427 Chevrolet with a 3-speed manual transmission. It ran a 942 at 148 miles per hour in Indianapolis, Indiana on September 5, 1971. Here is the Hamberis and Mitchell 1933 Willys. It was powered by a blown small block Chevy. This is a good picture with the Fremont Tower and tree. This is Paul Pittman's 1971 Sassy Gremlin with a blown 331 Hemi. It won the blown Gasser class at the 5th Annual Independence Day Championships held on Sunday, July 4, 1971, at Irwindale Raceway with a 954 at 144 miles per hour to beat Steve Wood's 1948 Ford Prefect. Here is Ontario George, owned by George Gray from Ontario, Canada. It is a 1933 Willys powered by a supercharged gas 392 Chrysler Hemi with a 4-speed manual transmission. It ran a 944 at 155 miles per hour in 1971. I have to say that looks like an old converted boat trailer the car is sitting on. But hey, they did what they had to do back then. Here is Ray Moore's chicken coop from Cleveland, Ohio. He drove the Chevrolet-powered 1940 Willys. He won NHRA's B-Gas National Championship at Indianapolis Raceway Park in 1961. His winning pass was an 1176 at 120 miles per hour. I saw this picture of the two Gassers, the Grove Brothers Opel versus the 55 Chevy. When you see this, you really have to envy the people that were there that day. This 1941 Willys called Flintstones cart belongs to Roy and Carolyn Beggs from Selma, California. It was powered by an injected gas 413 Dodge Hemi. On May 5, 1965 it ran an 1161 at 122 miles per hour at Fresno Dragways in Raisin City, California. This is the 1968 Opel Kadett Johnny Reb that ran in B-Gas. There is not a lot of information on this car, but it did run a 1057 at Richmond, Virginia in June of 1970. This is the Crandall Sandberg A-Gasser. From St. Paul, Minnesota, the team of Bruce Crandall, Dave Sandberg, and Dave Kruna built the tube chassis Anglia. Bruce Crandall drove the car, which ran low nines. In the mid-1960s, Joe and Tom Hrudka from Cleveland, Ohio built and ran this Seagas 1933 Willys supercharged panel truck. It had a Hilborn-injected small-block Chevy with a 471 blower. The car was later sold and renamed Foley's Fuller. This is Ron Bizio's 1933 Willys truck from Portland, Oregon. It was powered by a supercharged gas 446 Chrysler Hemi. In 1969 at Lyons it ran a 843 at 166 miles per hour. Lutz and Lundberg ran this A-Gas 1948 Anglia. It had an injected, small-block Chevy. In 1965 it ran 1043 at 134 miles per hour. This is the Allred's Tool Supply Vintage 37 Chevy B-Gasser. The second picture is the car launching at Lyons. This is Jim Lyons' F-Gas 1954 Ford Victoria from Louisville, Kentucky. There is not a lot of information on this car, but it has a weight-saving 1955 Chevy fiberglass front end on it. From what I read, this car was sponsored by Nick Allen Buick in Newport News, Virginia, and was ran by a mechanic and engine builder that worked there. It ran A-Gas with a small block Chevy and a Doug Nash Super T10 4-speed transmission. It ran in the low nines at over 150 miles per hour on gasoline. This 1936 Willys pickup truck called Slowpokes was owned by Wayne Harry and Bill Lewis from Vancouver, Washington. It was powered by a supercharged Oldsmobile with a 4-speed manual transmission. It ran 1139 at 133 miles per hour in 1962. Fred Stone, Leonard Woods Jr. and Doug Cook had several Willys cars that dominated the NHRA Gasser Wars in the 1960s. Cook drove to over 400 drag race victories in the famed Stone, Woods and Cook 41 Willys coupe car. They were it when it came to gassers. I could do a whole video just on these three guys. This is Don Knowles' 1937 Chevy from Granada Hills, California. It had a 327 Chevy with Hilborn injection for power. In 1964 it ran an 1184 at 116 miles per hour. I read he later dropped the weight of the car from 2,950 pounds to 2,250 and ran 1050 at 140 miles per hour. There is not a lot of information on this car. This B-Gas coupe was owned by Frank Bash Jr. from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Powered with a supercharged Chevrolet by Bash Racing engines with a 3-speed manual transmission. Here is the Aeroso brothers Tulare Muffler Shop 1940 Willys owned by Joe, Alvin and Lee Aeroso from Tulare, California. In 1966 it was powered by a supercharged 392 Chrysler Hemi with an automatic transmission. On April 19, 1966 at Fresno Dragway in Raisin City, California the car ran a 994 at 138 miles per hour. This is the Strip Blazer II, an A-Gas 1964 Chevrolet Malibu owned by Malcolm Durham from Hyattsville, Maryland. It was powered by a 427 Chevrolet with a 4-speed manual transmission. On October 11, 1964 it ran an 1136 at Numidia, Pennsylvania. Here is Ohio George Montgomery's 1967 Mustang. Being sponsored by Ford and racing a 1933 Willys, Ford convinced Montgomery that he had to make a change to a new body style that Ford customers could relate to. Their answer was this Mustang, and it began the movement of gassers to new, more aerodynamic body styles which likely accelerated the end of the gasser classes. Montgomery built the entire car starting with the basic Willys frame. It featured a blown Ford SOHC engine and C6 transmission. The car weighed 2,150 pounds. The car dominated from the start, setting 5 NHRA national records. His competitors were quick to switch body styles after Montgomery became so dominant in his Mustang. This would lead to the end of the gasser era as we knew it. I have a lot I could say here about what drag racing has become since the end of gasser class racing, but I'll save that for another video. In keeping with the subject matter of this video, I'll close with this. The gasser classes were intended to be class racing for street strip-type vehicles, but the sanctioning body let it get out of control, which we have seen this happen in all forms of racing. When the gasser classes were ended, it also ended the era of the low-budget, shade tree mechanic winning an NHRA title. Please comment below. As always, thanks for watching.